My name is Michael Ann Green, and I'm super excited to share my testimony with you all. I have shared my story many times, but I've never recorded it or had it recorded, so this is a little bit different for me. But my prayer is that as I share this, that everybody that hears it will just recognize the goodness of God and just how amazing He has touched my life, and I hope that it touches yours. So my name is Michael Ann, like I said. I grew up here in Walker County, Alabama. I have an older sister that's 7 years older than me. My parents divorced when I was very young. I don't even remember them being married. My dad remarried when I was about 5 or 6. And my stepmom, my stepmom and my dad, they never had any children together. I guess a few years into their marriage, I recognize now my stepmom was very mentally abusive to me. She was very controlling. There was times where she was, I felt like jealous of the relationship that I had with my dad. It was very hard. My mom and my stepmom disliked each other when they were apart, but face to face you would never know that. There was always bashing each other, and it was very confusing to the point I can remember being in the grocery store with my stepmom one day and running into my mom, but I knew they always talked so bad about each other. I didn't even speak to my own mom in the grocery store as a child because it made me feel so weird and awkward. I get a little bit older, and my mom would party a lot on the weekends, and she would leave my sister to babysit me. And my sister would have like small parties, small get-togethers, and I would see her drink and party with her friends. And I always looked up to her so much and kind of idolized anything she did. So me seeing her party and making it look so fun always made me think, well, I can't wait till I get older so I can try that myself. Within a few years, I'm probably 12 or 13, and I started drinking and smoking weed. My mom would buy the alcohol for me and my friends as long as we would hang out at the house and not really, get into anything. I get a little bit older, and I experienced my first heartbreak. It was my first love. I was in love with this guy, and he started seeing this older girl and cheated on me, and it really hurt really deep. I start partying a little bit more in high school. I would do whatever the party drug was. If it was ecstasy, if it was cocaine, whatever everybody else was doing, that's what I was going to do. And then come my senior year, my mom started paying for me a trip to go to Cancun as my graduation gift. And I guess it was around January or February of my senior year, and I found out that I was pregnant. And I can remember a conversation with my mom and a friend of hers, and them telling me, like, it's not a big deal. You can just get an abortion. Nobody will ever know. That way, the money that I've paid for this Cancun trip won't go to waste, because if you're pregnant, you won't be able to go to Cancun. And so my senior year, I had an abortion. And after that, I tried to numb even more. I started using pain pills on a regular basis. I battled with that for on and off for a while. I ended up started dating this guy. He was very mentally abusive, would do crazy things like turn off his headlights and drive up a curvy, windy road for 10 minutes at the middle of the night with no headlights on just to scare me. And I finally got away from that relationship, and I started dating a guy that was a police officer. And it just felt peaceful. It felt safe. And for a while, I was in this relationship. We ended up getting married. We had 2 little boys. Both times I got pregnant, I would stop taking pain pills. I was still battling with that pain pill addiction on and off during our marriage. He never was aware of it. I always kept it hidden from him. And so I was very unhappy, because it was like I lived a double life, because I had this secret problem over here, but then, I was mom and married to a police officer over here. And he always knew something was going on, but he never knew exactly what. So he was always like suspicious of, what I was doing or what I was saying, because things just didn't ever add up. So we ended up getting a divorce. I start dating a guy that also does pain pills. And so things just started getting a little crazier because I didn't have anything to keep me like contained. And that relationship was very, very unhealthy. I was very codependent. He would cheat on me all the time. And instead of leaving him, I can remember looking in the mirror and thinking, like, what is wrong with me? Why am I not pretty enough? Why am I not good enough? Why does he keep doing this? Maybe if I just love him more, maybe he'll continue to love me and he won't do this again. So it was very, very unhealthy. I moved to Tennessee, and I was only getting to see my boys like every other weekend when I would come to town. I had joint custody with them at the time. I was supposed to get them for 1 week and 1 week off, but I moved to Tennessee. I start, taking even more pain pills, and then I find out that I'm pregnant with my daughter. And I stopped doing pain pills. I stayed there throughout the pregnancy. I had her. My heart is just breaking because the unfaithfulness of the guy that I'm with. My boys are back here in Alabama. And so I moved back to Alabama. My dad actually called and he's like, look, I'm tired of you being so far away. He said, please come back here. I'll pay for you to go to beauty school. And that's something that I had been wanting to do. So I moved back here to Alabama. I started going to beauty school. I left the guy that I was with, my daughter's father. And about halfway through beauty school, he just shows up at my door one day and he's like, hey, let's get back together. I need to be in her life, all these things. And so I let him back in. And during this time, my mom's addiction had got pretty bad again. And me and her were fighting, arguing all the time. She was very mentally unstable. I would come home sometimes and find her naked in the front yard. Or I remember once I found her in a ditch. I ended up having to have my mom committed, which was extremely hard. She hated me at the time. But I didn't know what else to do. Like, it was absolute chaos. By the grace of God, I graduated beauty school. My mom was starting to get better, but it was still chaotic. It was still so unhealthy. And my addiction, it's on and off constantly. And my daughter's father was like, hey, do you think you could sell this methamphetamine? Do you think you could sell this ice one day? And I was like, no, that's the worst drug ever. I'll never touch that. And he's like, but if we started selling it, we could come up with enough money fast enough to be able to pay for a deposit for a place to rent, and we could get out of this house with your mom. We could get out of this chaos. And I was like, okay, that sounds like a plan. I guess we can do it. And started selling meth. Before long, of course, I'm doing it, and I spiraled quick. We were making a lot of money really fast. My mom actually started getting help. She started getting treatment herself, and she moves out of the house. She gets an apartment. And we end up losing the house. So now me, the guy that I'm with, and our daughter are bouncing around hotel to hotel, from Tennessee to Georgia to Alabama, selling drugs. And I kept telling him, like, something's going to happen. Like, we can't keep selling drugs like this forever and living like this. Like, something's going to happen. And one morning I woke up. We got up, we're at the hotel, and he's like, I've got to make this run. I've got to go sell this stuff. And I said, no, something doesn't feel right. He's like, no, I got to go. I'm like, no, we don't need to go. We need to stay here. He ends up leaving, and that night he gets busted with a lot of drugs on him. And so during this time, my dad had no clue about any of this, actually. He had no clue we were living in hotels, selling drugs. He had no idea that I was on drugs like this. Of course, my ex-husband, my kid's father, didn't know any of this was going on. But now this guy that I'm with is busted. It's a pretty big bust. And so I believe it was in the newspaper. Multiple people found out. My dad starts calling, and I won't answer because of the shame and the guilt. And one night I'm asleep in the hotel, and somebody starts knocking on the door, and it's the police, and they had came to get my daughter. And that was one of the hardest nights of my life, was having to hand her over to the police. My dad and my stepmom had got temporary custody of my daughter. And I go to my 72-hour hearing for her, and I show up, and there's my ex-husband with his attorney. I get served papers. I'm losing all rights to my boys now. And I had an FTA for a traffic violation here in Jasper. and I get handcuffed for that FTA before I even see the judge about my daughter. And so when I approach the judge, I have handcuffs on already. And that goes on for about 6 months. My addiction was just getting worse and worse. Instead of doing what I needed to do to get things back in order, I just spiraled faster because I was hurt and just, I didn't know where to begin because things were just so crazy at the time. And so it got really, really dark. And I remember the guy, my daughter's biological dad, he gets out of jail. You know, of course, he starts selling stuff again. Like, I feel like I'm losing my mind. And I remember begging him, like, please, let's stop this. Let's stop this. Let's get our daughter back. Let's do this. Let's do this. And he was always like, let's do this. Let's sell this one more time, one more time. And I was so just fed up. I remember sitting in a grocery store parking lot one day, and I was like, Lord, I know you exist and I know you're real, but I need out of this life. I need out of this lifestyle, and I don't know where to turn, God, but you do. So please, I just give this to you. Please make it better. And I can remember I didn't know how to pray, like, for real. I didn't know how to truly have a relationship with God. I always believed in God, but I remember the Carrie Underwood song, Jesus Take the Wheel, and I can remember singing that song in that parking lot. Jesus, take the wheel. I can't do this on my own. Please take the wheel. And that was my prayer. And within, I would say, 24 hours of sitting in that parking lot that day, I was mentally unstable. I was tired of this life. I had been up for days, and I was determined I was either going to hurt the guy that I was with because he wouldn't give me my keys to let me, try and go get some help, or I was going to go to jail. Like, something bad was going to happen that day. Like, something's going to change. I don't care how it happens. I won't change. And I ended up pretty much losing my mind that day. Someone calls to do a welfare check on me, and I had another FTA, failure to appear. I get arrested, and that time I'm in cuffs, and I actually felt peace for the very first time in my life. Not in my life, but the very first time in a long time, I felt peace knowing that I was handcuffed and I was going to jail that night, and I didn't have to worry about where I was going to sleep or if I was going to get robbed or what was going to happen. Because weeks before that, my door got kicked in. I got completely robbed. Everything was stolen that we owned. There was just multiple things that kept happening back to back. And I felt peace, and I was grateful that I was going to sit in jail that night. I stayed in jail there for about 30 days. Of course, I get sober while I'm there. I write my family and my kids letters like, I'm done using drugs. I don't want this lifestyle anymore. I'm going to do better. I made all these promises. And when I get out of jail and I call the guy that I'm with to come pick me up, I said, please don't have any drugs on you. Please, I don't want to be around it. I don't want to get high, but just please pick me up. And the only thing I'd owned at that point was my vehicle and a bag of clothes. And when he picks me up, he's not even in my vehicle, and he tells me it's in Tennessee. And I was very upset because I just wanted to get my car, and I just wanted to go to my mom's. I knew I could go there. My mom was sober, and she was doing well. I knew I could go there if I was sober. But I tell him, I was like, I want to go to Tennessee. Take me to Tennessee. I want my vehicle. And so we get to halfway to Tennessee. I realize, of course, everybody in the vehicle's high. And I tell him, I'm like, just give it to me. Like, I want it. He's like, no, I'm not going to give it to you. And I said, yes, I just forget it. I want it. And so I ended up getting high. And then within 24 to 48 hours of me getting released from jail, I'm now getting arrested in Tennessee for drug charges. And I can remember I was so angry because I had asked him not to have the drugs in the car, but they were in the car, and now I'm going to jail for them because he won't claim them. And I don't think I've ever been so mad before in my life. So I get arrested there in Wilson County. I don't even know where I'm at. I had never been to that county before in my life. That was a whole nother scary feeling. But I sit in this jail for about a week or two. And I'm just desperate. I've lost my kids, my home. I've now lost my vehicle. I've lost it all. And I was at a place of just pure emptiness. And I was upstairs during the lockdown time. And these ladies came and they ministered. And I sat at the door and I listened to them through the little beanhole. And as I listened, this lady, she shared that she too had been in that jail before. And when she shared that, I remember for that moment, it was like for the first time in my life, I felt hope, because I had never met anybody that had lost everything that I had lost, but successfully got it back and was able to turn their life around. And when she shared that, it just touched my heart in such a way I can't even begin to explain. But I gave my life to the Lord that night, and I felt the Lord for the first time. I felt like He was sitting there with me. I felt a peace and a comfort, and I knew in that moment that everything was going to be okay. A couple of days goes by, and in the middle of the night, the jailers come and wake me up, and I don't know what's going on, but they tell me that I need to move cells, and they move me down like 4 or 5 cells, and in this cell the next morning, the young girls are in there, and they're reading a Bible, and I'd never really read a Bible before. And I opened it up, and I can remember the first thing I read, I felt like it was about me. I felt like it just related to me so much, and I was just mind blown, like, wow, this is what the Bible is. And then we had a Bible study, I want to say the next day or so, and there was a lady that she gave me a Bible of my own that day. And then a few days later, in the middle of the night, the jailer comes and they move me again. And this cell was a medical cell, which made no sense because I had no medical issues. But this cell was with a lady that was a prayer. She was a praying woman, and she taught me how to pray. And she said, when you pray, don't ask the Lord, thank the Lord. Thank the Lord for what He's already done. And I had court coming up the next day, and I had that Bible, and I would look up the scriptures on anxiety and fear, and I would read those in peace, and I would read those scriptures over and over and over, and I had them marked with my pencil in the Bible. And my grandmother had always said something. She always would say, "This too shall pass." And in that cell, there was like small writing on the walls everywhere. And I can remember I would just like pace back and forth, and I would read the walls. And my mom had just wrote me a letter that I had read the night before. And in it, she said, always remember what Nanny would say, "This too shall pass." In the morning, right before court, I walked to the door, and I'm looking out the door, waiting on them to come get me to take me to court. And I look, and right eye level beside the window, it said, "This too shall pass." And I knew I hadn't seen that on the wall before, and I felt like I would know if it was there because it was a personal message to me. And I went to court, and I can remember sitting there, and my charges were dismissed. And when the judge said that, it was just like my ears were ringing out, my head was spinning, and I couldn't believe what had just been said. Like the drugs were in my car, but they were dismissed. And my attorney was like, "Don't you want to go home?" I said, "Yes, I want to go home." And he said, "Okay, well, get up. You have to go back to the cell, but then eventually they'll come and they'll let you out." So I moved back home to Jasper. I started going to outpatient groups. I started working. I was doing pretty good, starting to get to see my children. I messed up a few more times because I would get lonely and I would get depressed, and somebody would call and I would end up getting high. And then I would be angry at myself because I was so close to, like, I was getting to see my kids on a regular basis. And it's like, why would you do this? You've come so far. Why would you go back? And I can remember at that point, I was just checking my boxes, doing whatever the judges recommended that I do to get my children back. And I went to court one day, and the judge was like, "I think you need to start going to a church." And so I started looking for a church. I went to a few, and I finally found one where I felt that I was comfortable. I felt like I was literally met with love at the door, and I was so broken. I was so hurt. I had so much just stuff to work through still. Feeling that love at the door was really one of the things that just impacted me in such a way. People were glad to see me, and they didn't know my name. And that's where I started learning on how to have a relationship with the Lord. I got my kids back. I started volunteering just wherever I could get my hands. I stayed so busy between outpatient groups. I was doing therapy. I was going to church. I was volunteering at the church. I was working. Staying busy is one thing that got me where I am today. learning how to have that relationship with the Lord, having people pour into me, staying connected to people at the church. But this guy started coming to the church, and they announced that he was going to start a recovery ministry and needed some help. And so I volunteered. I was like, hey, I'm in recovery. I would love to help. I started volunteering with this ministry. We called it Celebrate Life, and I became like the co-lead. Me and the guy actually start dating. Eventually, we get married. That is my husband now. My husband adopts my daughter. Her biological father, once I got sober, he never came back around. And so my daughter has a very wonderful father now. During this time of doing Celebrate Life, we started working with a local ministry here in Jasper. It's called Hope for Women. It's a women's faith-based discipleship rehab. I started helping with that. They started coming to our Celebrate Life program, and I realized just how much I loved working with women that were in recovery themselves. And I applied to be a certified recovery support specialist. I got accepted to the program. I have my certification. I've worked as a peer now for 5 years, where I help people get into rehab. I work for Recovery Resource Center. We do intakes and assessments and help connect people with treatment centers all over the state of Alabama. I actually go into the jail here on Mondays and Tuesdays and do those intakes with people that want help. And then about 3 years ago, maybe 4 actually, I was begging my husband. I always wanted to get back in the door to do jail ministry. And I was begging my husband, please, let's see if we can make this happen. Let's see if we can start doing jail ministry. I want to give back what has been given to me. There was somebody that came and spoke in a jail, shared their testimony, and I gave my life to the Lord because of that. And I want to be able to do that. And the doors opened, and me and my husband started doing jail ministry here in Walker County. He's now the chaplain here at the jail. And then actually last night, we had the opportunity, or a couple weeks ago, my husband went and spoke at a conference here in Winston County. And a prayer of his had been to be able to start doing ministry in other counties here in Alabama. And the sheriff of Winston County approached my husband and said, hey, if you guys would like to start doing ministry in our jail, we would love to have y'all. And so for the first time last night, we got to go minister in Winston County, which is also a jail that I've been incarcerated in before. I had been incarcerated in Walker County as well. So the Lord has literally just led me through a path of redemption, where he's gone in and not only set me free from things, but then taken me back to those very places where I've been able to minister to others, where I was once incarcerated. Or once we were invited to join a ministry in Anniston, Alabama. And when we got off the interstates, I recognized where I was, and I said to my husband, I was like, that's the hotel where the police came and they took my daughter from me. So I had him pull me over there, and I remember walking up to the door of the hotel, and I put my hands on it, and I just thanked the Lord. I prayed over the door, and I asked him to redeem that time. And as I was doing that, I